I thought you were starting right there because you like took a big breath, and I was like, why does he need such a big breath to start the episode? He says like 4 words.
I needed a big breath to like swallow and clear my throat. Welcome back to Pride and Accomplishment. I'm Chris.
And I'm Jason. This is episode 53.
Jason, today I wanted to talk about a specific genre of games. A genre which I have been playing a lot of, and I don't think that you have played a lot of.
So we're talking about roguelikes, and I have this. Okay, so I just want to start by like saying that I want to like publicly say that I like roguelikes, but I just don't ever play them. And we can talk about that more of that, but like you're right. In the end, I don't play a whole lot of them. But I think they're a good game, and I think they're a good game genre, and I think they're a good like basis and foundation of a type of game. So maybe we should talk about a little bit about like what they are first.
Yeah, do you know why that they call them roguelikes?
No, I have no idea. I've literally no idea. Roguelike, that means they have to be like Rogue, but like where did Rogue come from?
Exactly. So Rogue was actually a game that came out in 1980. So it is not a recent game.
And I assume that when you died, you started over?
Yes. So Rogue was a dungeon crawling game. So you started out, and I believe you played as a parenthesis. I forget. It was a text-based game, and you would play it over like SSH or Telnet or something. Like you would really like it would draw it in a terminal, and then you could move around with the Vim navigation keys, like HKJL, like to go up, down, left, right. And it was like turn-based. So you had your little character. Maybe you were a $, I forget. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So you had your little character, and you would drive around, and every time that you made a move, then the enemies, like the whole dungeon got to take a step, like a time step. So you had infinite time to kind of think about what was going on. And so you really weren't rewarded by speed. But the whole point of Rogue was that it was like randomly generated dungeons, and you were going down and down and down floors. And I don't know, I've never beaten it. So it was something that like, I think you could win, but I maybe not. I'm not sure. So
what parts of what you just said define a roguelike today? Because I like you said a lot of words in there, like dungeon crawling, and could you get like, was there a win condition, and you started over when you died, and randomly generated. Like what parts of those are required for a roguelike to be a roguelike?
I think the biggest one is probably the procedurally or randomly generated levels. So it's something where it has a lot of replayability because there's a lot of kind of different things that you can encounter. One thing that I heard when I was looking at actually like an ad for a different roguelike game was somebody said that the thing that you gain between runs is the knowledge of the world and how it works. So one of the key tenets, I would say, of roguelike games typically is that they kind of don't tell you much about like what stuff does, right? They'll just like give you something and like, here's a potion, it's green. And you're like, okay, the green potion. What do I do with the green potion? And so then at some point you're playing the game and you're like, I'm going to try to drink that green potion. And then the game goes, okay, you died. And you're like, And I guess another feature of roguelikes or Rogue in general is that like it's permadeath, right? So you don't get to just like continue from the last floor or anything like that. You start over from the beginning. But the next time you come to that green potion or come to some green potion, you'll be like, oh, well, last time I drank a green potion and I died, so I'm not going to do that again. And so there's a little bit of like, you can talk to your friends about it and say like, oh, have you gotten any green potions? Because they're bad.
Because like a lot of the other elements, like the you learn stuff and like, I don't know how bear with me here. All right. Just a little bit. Because like the original Super Mario, you die and you go back to the beginning. Now that wasn't really a feature of the game because they couldn't do like, you couldn't save the game. But like, to me, that felt a lot like a roguelike just because, when you play it today, because when you died, you were done. It was over. There was nothing that you got when you started the next round, the next game.
Okay, I could see that.
But it's not procedurally generated.
Exactly. So Mario is like, you can learn the level, right? You can know, like speedrunners, right? They can just like, oh yeah, I push this button, then that button, then this button, then that button, and exploit this glitch and go. But like, it's always the same every single time, and they can plan on that. Whereas Rogue and roguelikes tend to be procedurally generated within a set of rules. So you might say like, oh yeah, on the first level you use this tile set, or the first level you have these kinds of enemies, the second level you have different kinds of enemies, third level you have other kinds of enemies. Like, it's a rule-based thing, but it's not every time exactly the same. Like, there's 3 enemies and then 2 enemies and then 1, you know, it doesn't go that formulaically. So I think that's really the major difference, and that's why the original Super Mario would not be considered a roguelike game, in my opinion.
The other large differentiating factor that is very important to me, because I wouldn't actually say I like roguelikes. I say I like roguelite. Lights, Lites or whatever, because there's a metagame to it, right? And that's like the major difference is when you die, you start over. Yes, you've gained knowledge of how the game works and how it operates, but you also have earned some kind of meta currency or some kind of unlock that changes the game, typically in a way that benefits you. So what's a really simple example of this? You know, like a certain kind of currency you collect during the actual game, you don't lose when you die, and then you can spend to make you get another heart of life, right? So it makes the next run of the game easier. There's lots of different forms of this, you know, some more prominent than others, but I generally like those types of games because even in those, like, even if you're really, really bad, eventually, if you throw yourself at the wall enough, you could probably get somewhere with them because they get easier over time because you've thrown yourself at the wall so many times.
Yeah, I also like roguelite better than roguelike games because they are a little bit easier as you continue to work at them. But I think that there's kind of a place for either, and certain games have more or less kind of helpful roguelite elements to them. So I do though prefer things where I can actually feel like I've got that metagame and I'm gaining strength or gaining experience in the game, not just experience in my own head.
So I want to come back to like why I like these games, but I don't know why I don't end up playing them, but like in essence, they're good games. They're engaging. They force you to learn things. They force you to engage with the game, to, you know, really pay attention to how certain things work, you know, and I'm going to start getting into some concrete examples here because I think it's easier, but like in, here's a great one, like super, super great example. In Crypt of the Necrodancer. So this one specifically is all about like the beat of the game and like moving and attacking only on the beat. It has a very musical element of it, which I really like. But the thing that you learn, the thing that you really have to learn and pay attention to in this game is the movement and attack patterns of enemies. And once you get you really can't beat the game until you get those down, because you'll know, oh, this one moves in a square, and based on the beat, like I can be in this square because it's safe on this beat because it always moves in the same kind of directional pattern. So you start to like really learn the enemies, and that's a really cool, like that's a cool game element. That's like a really engaging thing. And Crypt of the Necrodancer does a really nice job of changing it up quite often. You know, there's certain enemies that change the tempo of the beat, or certain ones that, you know, you'll see certain types of enemies in phase 1, and then you go into the next dungeon or the next level or whatever it is, and they totally change the enemies up. So you're like, you got to do it all over again. But because you've mastered level 1 and you still have to go through it because it's a roguelite, like, I don't know, whatever. Because you still have to go through level 1, you feel like this awesome, like really powerful person now because you're like, oh, I've mastered these. So it's combining a lot of elements of like good game design, I would say, into the actual genre of the game.
Yeah, it is a roguelite because it has those diamonds that you get, and you can use them to unlock certain types of items that are in every future run going forward. So that's why it would be a roguelite. But I agree that it gives you a combination of those things, plus you have to learn, right? It requires you to figure out what the enemy does and how they move in order to win, basically. Well, I was going to say that there's not that much randomness in that game, but there's a lot of randomness in the level design, but there's even randomness in the items that you pick up, because I always like to pick up the thing that gives you health back, right? The thing that's like the vampire sphere or whatever it is. And I enjoy getting that item. So I guess that's the randomness there. But Crypt of the Necrodancer, great game. And then there's also the one that's on the Switch that's all Zelda themed, which has all Zelda music, which is also great.
I can't think of very many roguelikes that I actually enjoy. I don't know that there are very many actual straight, true definition roguelikes that I have played, but I think Dungeon of the Endless is one of them.
Yes, Dungeon of the Endless definitely is one of them. So Dungeon of the Endless is a game where you have different rooms, and there's, I think, 12 or 13 floors, and each floor has a randomly generated pattern of rooms, and you can open these doors, and the door can either have a good thing behind it, or enemies behind it, or nothing behind it. And you choose when you're ready to do that opening. And that's all kind of turn-based, and then once there's enemies, it turns into a real-time game where you have to move your characters from room to room to protect your crystal in the center of the map. And that's a super fun game. I really, really do like that game. But it is a true roguelike because there's nothing that you can do in between runs except for unlock characters, which I guess we could debate what that counts as. But there's nothing else that you can do in terms of like, oh yeah, this item will drop or, not drop or whatever in order to influence your next run from a previous run.
And the way you explained it, it sounds like there's a win condition. I've never gotten there, but there's a win condition in this game?
In Dungeon of the Endless, there is a win condition if you get out of the spaceship that you're in, or dungeon, or whatever it is.
So is a win... I wouldn't say a win condition, though, is a necessary requirement of this game type. Because I'm in the original Rogue, I don't know that we have the answer offhand, but I guess for every game that I see on the list, there is... Oh, no, you know what? The Risk of Rain 2. I don't think there's a win condition for that one. I think you always, in some way, shape, or form, you lose at the end. Because it just keeps getting harder.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that having a win condition is required, but I would say that there's something about like being able to kind of have that like leaderboard or like that kind of, I don't know, sense of winning, right? That you want to have people be able to have. So I feel like there is kind of a win condition most of the time.
Two really popular, well, at least one really popular roguelites. Roguelite. This is really hard for an audio podcast. I got to say, you got to be really careful on how you say it. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Hear whatever you want on the other side of the speaker. Two really popular roguelites that have come out recently. One just exploded, was Hades. Just it is, kind of right in the definition there. It was really good. It did have a win condition. I thought it was a perfect level of difficulty, and then part of the metagame in Hades was you could both make it easier by earning certain like perks, but you could also make it harder by adding what they called heat in the game. So you could kind of balance the game all on your own, like however you wanted, and obviously you were rewarded for harder things and all that. But that was, and the story behind it was what the thing I really liked about Hades was the death, right? You when you lost or you died had a really good story element to it. Like it actually made sense in the story as to why your character could die and come back and like start over.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Hades. I picked it up towards the end of last year on the Switch and played it on one of my, take the Switch on a trip and play a game ventures. And then I immediately came home and bought it on PC also and played it there. So I love that it has cross-save. That's one of its big things. I think we talked about recently that you can sync your progress between the Switch and the PC, which is why I got it on PC. And I do like all of the things you mentioned, the story persisting in between runs and the kind of ability to adjust things once you've beaten the game with a single weapon. You can switch to a different weapon and beat it with that one, or you can keep the same weapon and make it harder. It's kind of just a choice. And they have a really robust metagame system where you can give yourself upgrades like, more health or like a cheat death or like multiple cheat deaths and all of those kinds of things. So I really have enjoyed playing Hades. I'm not done with it yet. I think I've only actually beaten it probably 3 times. And as Jason keeps telling me, you have to beat it like, 10 or 20 times in order to get the whole story. So that's a pretty deep. I mean, I would say it's deep, but it's not like long because you can do a full run in, half an hour or something like that.
Right.
And maybe that's another thing about rogue likes and roguelite games here is that it kind of gives you that one more turn aspect that you have kind of from like a civ game, right? You're either, if you have something that has gated levels to do, you're like, oh, I can just do, one more floor. Or if it's something that's a quick game, that you die quickly and you can get back into it quickly, you get one more run, right? I just want to try this again one more time because this time, surely I'll do better. And surely there won't be some randomly generated giant boss that kicks my butt. But that obviously almost never happens. But sometimes you feel like there's always a chance that you could do better this time than you did last time.
Yeah, that's really important for me, particularly what you said about being able to get back in really quickly. There should be, if you want to, there should be almost no time in between death and starting over. Sometimes they make it really tough, and that leads to just kind of me losing interest really fast. One of the games that does this really well is the other one I wanted to mention was Enter the Gungeon. And the game itself is hilarious. I love Enter the Gungeon. Like there are so many guns from all the games, and like they're just ridiculous. But something it does really well is if you die, it's very fast paced, right? Like you get in, you run. If you die, you can be back in and playing within seconds, like 5 to 6 seconds, and you're back into the first level again. So that's like really cool for me. And it really gave me that I'm going to try one more time kind of mentality. See how far I can get next, this next time. Cause there was very little I could do in between levels. There was no point in walking around kind of the meta game. Cause the only thing that I could do was just get better and learn the enemies and try again. And it made it very easy to kind of do that over and over again.
So we're saying that Enter the Gungeon is the first or maybe second roguelike game on our list here?
No, I think there is a metagame to it, but in early game, you really didn't have access to it. So, I mean, there's also that element where like they start as roguelikes for an extended period of time where there's literally nothing you can do other than get better, get good. And eventually they may turn into something that offers you metagame opportunities. But I haven't played Enter the Gungeon that much, but I haven't gotten to that point there. And it's still a great game. It's still something that kind of like draws me back into like try one more time, even though there's no metagame that is, pushing me to make it easier. Now at the same time, I haven't played it in a while because I got to a point where I was like, I'm not feeling like I'm getting any better. I don't know how to get any better. So, there's some give and take there.
I think the game that actually got me into this genre was FTL, Faster Than Light. I don't know if you've ever played that one, but it is a lot of fun.
Is it turn-based?
It's not turn-based, but it is room-based. Like it's like got a map, and you go from node to node on the map, and you can choose, branching paths sometimes to get yourself from left to right on the star map, I guess it is.
Is it multiplayer?
I don't think so. So FTL, it's single player, I'm pretty sure. I played it on PC first and then on iPad, which was actually a pretty good way to control it. But basically, it's a Star Trek simulator, in my view, where you have a little crew of up to, I think, 4 people. And similar to Dungeon of the Endless, you can have them like move around to the different rooms of your ship. And different ships have different rooms. So like one of them will have like a med bay, one of them have like a cloning lab. Like you can get different upgrades for your ship as in a given run. So it doesn't persist from run to run. And each time you kind of start randomly with a different set of crew, and you can like pick up new crew members if you meet them along the way and like you pay them, or maybe, I forget if you pay them or if they just join you. But then sometimes you go to a node and there's like enemies, and so then you have to fight the enemies. And sometimes you fight them from space, and sometimes you fight them from on your ship. And it's similar to Dungeon of the Endless, where in those instances it turns into a real-time game where you have to like tell your people which room to go into so that they don't get killed, or you can like open the airlock, and so you can take the oxygen out of a room and you can, you know, suffocate the enemies instead of having to necessarily shoot them to death. So it's got a lot of really interesting gameplay mechanics in that regard, and I really enjoyed that game. I haven't played it in a long time because I kind of finished it. I mean, I kind of got to the point where I felt like I was just done with it. And that is kind of, to your point, like a feature or maybe a bug of a lot of these roguelike games. You just kind of end, like you get done with them before you finish them. Or maybe there's not a good finish condition for them. Have you ever played FTL?
I have not. It's been one of those games that Steam like constantly recommends to me. I don't know why. Probably because it's space and it's, you know, it just falls into a bunch of categories that I play. But I've never picked it up. I've just never. I probably own it from some Humble Bundle or something, but I've just never played it. That's why I was kind of asking you if it was multiplayer, because there's no faster way to get me to play something than to be like, hey, Jason, you want to play this together? You know, I'm much more inclined to like, yeah, sure, let me install it real fast. So that's kind of exciting to me. Speaking of which, I really do like roguelikes that are multiplayer. You know, Risk of Rain, we talked about. I think you can play Crypt of the Necrodancer 2-player. I'm not really too sure about that. But the big one is a turn-based one called For the King, which is like an RPG tabletop turn-based roguelite. It's really weird. It's a great game. But it's multiplayer. So I really like those. So if I'm going to have to look at FTL and see, I think you're right. I don't think it's multiplayer, but I would take a look. I would try it, especially if I already own it.
FTL for me does something that my current favorite roguelite game, well, I guess that one it's actually more roguelike. My current favorite roguelike game does, which is it has this map and it has like, you pick these nodes and you go up go through the levels or whatever. And in the effort to get to the end, and sometimes you just don't make it. And the game that I'm playing right now is actually Slay the Spire, which came out a few years ago. It was actually published by Humble Bundle altogether, and it took the world by storm, and I just kind of missed it or chose to ignore it. I don't remember. And now I've come back to it, and it came in some Humble Bundle, and also I got it on the Switch on some super sale and played it on a trip that I took not too long ago. And Slay the Spire is like my new favorite game for the minute.
So I've played Slay the Spire, or I've watched other people play it, probably is more accurate. This is the one where the whole, like you choose your path, right? Like, and it's kind of like you're choosing your path through like different rooms. But the game itself is like a card game, right? Like a deck builder?
Correct. So you start off with a deck of, I think, 10 cards in the beginning of the whole game. And at the end of each like room in the dungeon or every battle, I guess you'd say, at the end of each battle, you get a card or the option to pick up a card from one of 3 choices. And so you can choose to add cards to your deck and build your deck. And so if you add more cards to your deck, you will obviously have more things you can do. But also if you have like that one card that you want to keep, using because it has high damage, you can end up burying it in your discard pile because you have 45 cards in your deck, and you only draw 5 cards per turn. So it takes you 9 turns to get through your whole deck. And most fights are like over in 6 turns or less. So it's a turn-based battle game, and you use cards to play for offense or defense. And that's kind of the pitch. I mean, it's a lot of fun. There's 4 different characters, and each different character has kind of their own color of deck that they play with, and that has different mechanics and stuff. But like, that doesn't really matter. If you're just playing as the warrior, you have attacks and you have defense, and then you have skills and you have powers, and those are it basically for cards that you can choose. And
is there a story to it too? Like I seem to remember like some kind of, Slay the Spire, you're climbing a tower. Do you know why?
I think there's some kind of mediocre or small story. It's really more about the gameplay than the story, at least in my opinion. Maybe I'm not paying close enough attention, but there's like this weird giant whale that before you start every run of the game, he like gives you like 3-word sentences that are like, you know, do better or something. I mean, it's really not like particularly story laden. Hades is like telling you all the interpersonal relationships between all the gods of Olympus, and it's like, you know, got this whole big web of story stuff. And yeah, Slay the Spire has basically nothing. There's this weird heart that you meet at the end that you have to just like attack because you got to the end, and that's the end of the game. I think there's a little bit of metagame there. Once you've kind of beaten one run with each one of the 3 main characters, you can do like a better run to get like the Act 4, and maybe you get a little more story out of it, you know. But I'm not there yet. But even then, there isn't really a lot of like persistent story. There's no real, like, nobody cares who you are, who your character is. Like, there's no mystery to it. It's just kind of, you're in this place, you got to get out, you battle your way out. But it's got a very satisfying, I would say, it's got a very satisfying gameplay loop, in that the picking up of the cards, and like you get these relics that have like permanent buffs for that run, and getting the right relic that's like, oh, every time that you, I don't know, play a defense card, do 3 damage to all enemies. You're like, oh, that's really powerful. And then you start building your deck towards getting more defense cards so that you can play more defense cards so that you increase your block, but also you do damage to your enemies. So like, it's a really interesting way to make the runs different. It's like you get these different power-ups, and maybe depending on which power-ups you find and you pick up, that might influence what you choose to build your deck towards in that particular run. But the next run could be totally different.
Yeah, Hades does a good job of that. Well, a lot of roguelikes do a lot of good job of that, right? Like Enter the Gungeon randomizes your guns. Hades randomized your like boons. You know, a lot of good roguelikes do a really good job of kind of like forcing you into different gameplay, you know, and kind of thinking on the fly. So that is cool. That is kind of fun. Sometimes very annoying, but most of the time pretty fun. How many times? So you've mentioned you've beat Slay the Spire at least once, right? You got to the last level or whatever. How many times did it take you before you could do that? Like once? Like, was it tens or hundreds, or, you know, how many retries?
I don't think it was more than 10 times total, probably. So I kind of lucked into it fairly early. But then if we go back to something like Hades, where Jason was telling me like, oh yeah, you know, you'll probably beat the game within like 6 tries.
I did not say that.
And it took me probably 35 tries to get to the end of Hades, even just to get to see the final boss of Hades. And then it probably took me another 5 or 10 tries from there to actually beat them.
I didn't say 6. I just thought it took a little longer than it should have.
Yeah, that was really helpful.
You're welcome.
But I would say that Slay the Spire is not a difficult roguelike game, but it does have an ascension system after you've beaten it once, or maybe once with all characters, I don't know, where you can basically add a difficulty modifier level, and they do different things. So like the first one will say, okay, more elites will show up on the map, so you have more opportunities to fight essentially mini bosses. And the mini bosses are cool because they drop relics, which again are those kind of permanent upgrades for you. So that's actually like an interesting way to both increase the risk and increase the reward of making a run different. So right now I'm kind of like done with Slay the Spire. Well, maybe not done, but I'm enjoying Slay the Spire, but I'm sort of looking for that next like novelty roguelike thing. And I asked some friends kind of what they think of as good options. I actually want to try a more action-based roguelike. So I typically try to play like turn-based things or stuff that gives me some time to think in between what I'm doing. But I actually have a lot of curiosity for Spelunky 2, which just came out, I think, in the fall of 2020.
I've heard of this one, but I cannot remember what it is.
You would not like it. It's a 2D side-scrolling dungeon crawling thing. So it's a platformer, basically. But it's supposed to be very, very difficult. And I've seen a friend stream it, actually, and it was pretty interesting to watch. And I want to play it. I want to play it on the Switch, though, because, again, my 2D indie games, I tend to just want to play on the Switch. And it's not on the Switch yet. It's coming out sometime in the summer of 2021, but it hasn't come yet for the Switch. So I'm kind of waiting on that. Although right now, as we record, it is the Steam summer sale and Spelunky's on sale for, I don't know, $13 or something. So I might give in and just pick it up. But that is definitely one that's kind of on my radar, on my list.
I'm watching gameplay of this video right now, and you're right. I would absolutely hate this.
Yeah, especially because it's one of these games that, like, you know, one errant thing that's really not exactly your fault can completely kill you and end your run. So it would be super frustrating.
And this is procedurally generated, or these are pre-made levels?
I think it's procedurally generated within a certain set of rules for each, like, tile set or each level.
Oh my God, I would hate this. I'd be interested in watching you play. I would not play this myself.
All right. Well, that may seal it here. I may have to pick up Spelunky 2 for PC so I can stream it. And then if I really like it, then I'll pick it up on the Switch to take on a trip or something.
The other thing that I would do for this one, oh God, this is perfect territory. So some of you know that I watch a streamer a lot. I get to choose one game a month that he has to play.
Oh dear.
I might choose this one.
Oh, that's so mean.
Oh God. I'll have to look. This is God, that could be funny.
Another game that keeps coming into my head along the same lines is Noita, Noita, which is a game that's like similar to Spelunky, I think, in terms of it's a 2D side scrolling thing. But its claim to fame is that it's based on like sand, and it's like got all these particles, and then all of the particles are simulated in 2D. So, but then the thing that people say is like the particles are like will kill you. So like one little pixel will just like hurt. I mean, I don't know if it'll kill you, but
Chris?
it'll like hurt you.
Why do you want to do this to yourself?
I don't know. It's just something about
who likes these games.
Something about the challenge of it is it's intriguing to me.
Oh God, no! I'm veto on this one too. Again, maybe I'll watch you, but God, this just looks painful. Just the trailer itself looks painful. They're just going through in the trailer. If you haven't seen the trailer for this one, they're just going through all of the different ways you can die. That's the trailer.
Yeah, I think Noita might be a little bit too sadistic for my taste. Like I'm not looking forward to dying. Like I want to be able to succeed. Like I want to, and I also want to be able to have kind of that metagame where I feel like I'm either making good choices in a particular run or making choices outside of that run to get better things so that I can do better next time. Because let me tell you, that's why it took me so long to do Hades, is because it took me that long to get enough kind of meta stuff to be able to be good enough, like to get over the hump, I'd say, for me to be like passable at that game. Now I think I'm kind of good, like not really good, but if I, slow down, pay attention, I can actually do pretty well in Hades without, relying on all of my cheat deaths before I get to the third of 4 worlds. But I would say that that's been a long time coming. So I'm not saying, I think Noita is going to fall off because it's just going to be so difficult, but Spelunky is still kind of on the list.
I'm surprised you haven't said Endless Dungeon.
Oh, I keep forgetting about that. It's because it's not out yet. I mean, yeah, Endless Dungeon is from the people that made Dungeon of the Endless, and it looks like it's going to be the same kind of thing, except that it's going to have a bigger focus on co-op and maybe a little bit more on like real-time control of your characters. And I think kind of what I'm seeing.
It looks really good. It's still not announced, but it looks like this one would be really fun. Like I'm looking forward to this one coming out.
Me too. Another game that came out recently in the same vein as Slay the Spire is one called Griftlands. And this one is another kind of deck building. It is somebody called it like a mix between Slay the Spire and Mass Effect, which is interesting. And I thought might perk Jason's ears up a little bit.
Yes, it immediately does. What is it called? Driftland?
Grift with a G.
Griftland.
It's a deck building game, but you have 2 different decks. You have one of conversation and one of combat. So you can try to use your conversation deck to like play different, things, or I don't know exactly how it works, but play different things to try to de-escalate a situation. And if you fail, then you have to fight. So it's kind of a different take on it. Some of the podcasters of other video game podcasts I was listening to said they were playing it, but that all the time that they were playing it, they were thinking, oh, I should just be playing Slay the Spire. So I don't know. I think I might give it a shot though, because I am really enjoying Slay the Spire, and I don't usually like deck building games. So I think I'll have to maybe give that a shot. Another one of the deck buildings kind of along the same lines that somebody recommended to me was Roguebook, which looks like a cross between For the King and Slay the Spire, because it has like an overworld map that's got those like hexes and all that, and then like a hex grid, and then you build a deck very similar to Slay the Spire, and then you use the deck to fight. So that one also looks kind of good. Might have to take a look at it.
Yeah, you follow this a lot closer than I do. I haven't heard of any of these games. As you're like kind of saying them out loud, I'm typing them in real fast just to see if I can get a trailer up. And I would say most of them do not draw me. Most of them. Endless Dungeon does, but again, that's nowhere near to be out yet. But even Griftland, like I pulled it up, and you're right, like it has this Mass Effect kind of vibe a little bit in being like in space and conversation being important and all that, but it didn't I don't know. It didn't draw me. But there are some really good roguelikes that I like. There are good ones. And I will say it again, I like to play multiplayer roguelites because it's fun, especially when like there's no pressure to do like that's a really nice thing that maybe we didn't mention. Like there is like, you want to do well, right? You want to make it as far as you can, but like death is expected. So there's in a multiplayer setting, there's like no pressure to perform perfectly because everyone's just learning. Everyone's just playing this game. And, you know, if you guys die, that is literally part of the game. That is like an integral part of the game loop. So that's kind of cool. And I kind of like that part of it. So, you know, it's real. A lot of times, like it's high intensity, but low pressure, which is really cool. So that's kind of a fun element.
Yeah. It kind of takes away the like, oh, you screwed up, therefore we lost. It's like, no. We're supposed to lose.
Right. Exactly.
I would say that's the same thing for Risk of Rain, because we played that a few times, and we should play it again. Like that was actually really fun.
That game's hard.
Yeah, exactly. It's you play and you expect to lose, and so I don't know. I always am tempted to kind of try to build up and do well and like, you know, farm a bunch before going on to the next level. But then I understand that the things get harder the longer the game takes, and it's just a whole thing. But it's fun to play with people. It's a fun, like, it's because it is multiplayer. It is fun.
All right. Well, we talked about a ton of roguelike games. We probably missed some, as we always do in every episode we ever talk about games. If you have a multiplayer roguelike, you know, send it my way. But if you have any recommendations for roguelike or roguelite, either one, we'd love to hear your suggestions on things that we should check out, or maybe things that we should, you know, kind of follow up on in the next episode. The best way to let us know about what you think or some of your favorites is to visit our Discord, which you can get to at discord.pnapodcast.com.
If you'd like to find our show notes or listen to any of our older episodes, you can visit our website at pnapodcast.com. That's P, the letter N, and the letter A, podcast.com. There you can also find a link to email us and get in touch. And I don't know, do we have a Discord link on there?
Yeah, it's there somewhere.
Great.
If you're enjoying the show, we would really love if you could just share it with other people who may enjoy it as well.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you next time. So, Jason, I did a thing.
Oh, God, what'd you do?
Dota 2 came out with their new event. They're not doing...
The international or something different?
They're not doing an international compendium this year because technically, similar to the Olympics, this year, the international is the International 10 from last year. It's the 2020 International all over again.
Okay, so what are they doing? Why couldn't they just call it the International Compendium again?
I don't know. It's because they wanted to be difficult. They said early on in the season, like in kind of mid-spring, that they were going to do two different events kind of before and after the international tournament, which I was like, oh, they're going to be like kind of lame little events or whatever. It's no good. But they've come out with this game mode and they're calling it Nemistis. Nemistis. I don't know. Nemestice. And they've come out with a compendium for it, like a battle pass with 500 levels.
This sounds like a 1v1.
No. It does sound like one, but it's not. So it's actually like playing Dota on a weird map. And they have these spots on the map where you can get these meteors that land every so often. And when you pick up the meteor, you like channel on the meteor, and like every 3 seconds that you channel or something like that, you get up like a charge. And like when you get charged up, you do more damage, but also if you get supercharged up, you have like lightning that comes off of you. And then it's a typical 5v5, but you have 4 different lanes to manage. Again, kind of on a weird map. It's not the Dota map. So you have 4 different lanes to manage, and all you have to do is kill the other players, all 4 of their towers. That's it. Like the whole game mode takes probably 15 minutes to play. And it's really interesting, like an interesting game mode. It's kind of fun because it is like every time Dota does a custom game mode, it's really refreshing to me because it basically says, okay, you can take your knowledge of all the Dota characters, and then you can take all of the rules that you know about what you should play, what you should buy, how you should behave, and all of these things, and throw them out the window because they give you options and ways to play where you're like, yeah, I can play this without having to worry about really buying many support items. Or like in this mode, yeah, somebody has to buy wards, but the wards are cheap, or you get gold so fast that it doesn't matter, or whatever. And so it really changes the rules and changes the game and mixes it up, but allows you to play with familiar abilities and familiar heroes and things like that. And still kind of this game mode especially gets you straight into team fights just like instantly. Like there's no creeps, as I recall. I mean, well, no, there are creeps. So you get last hits, but like it's basically just a team fight simulator. Like there's no like waiting and laning and leveling because everything is running at the turbo speed as far as XP and gold. So it's really just about getting in there and fighting with people. But then, yeah, and synergies and that kind of thing. So you don't have to really pick supports so much. You don't really have to like be mindful of lanes so much. You can kind of turtle at your last tower and try to, hope that your opponent gets so focused on you that they, you can have one person split pushing or however you want to do it. But it's an interesting game mode and a different way to play kind of traditional Dota.
So, but the thing you want to tell me about is the 500 level battle pass.
Yes, I do want to mention that. So they have this battle pass, and the rewards that they have for the battle pass are kind of lame by compendium standards. But they have, one chest that has, 10 or 15 new items. Great. Good for them. But they have a few different levels along this battle pass that you get. You unlock items in a set for Davian the Dragon Knight.
Oh, from the anime.
Yeah, from Dota Dragon's Blood, the anime on Netflix.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, you can actually... So, like, we were all like, oh, yeah, they should have him be in there and all that stuff. And they didn't do that right after the show, which was kind of surprising. But now you can actually kind of get in and be able to play as Davian as like a skin for the Dragon Knight character, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool. It took them long enough.
I know.
So what level are you on the battle pass?
I think I'm level 101 or 100. I don't know.
How many did you buy?
100.
Oh, okay.
So they have packs that go from, like one, like starter packs basically that start you from 150 or 100. And I was just like, I'll go for the 100.
Yeah, that's not an unreasonable price too. That's I mean, for what you put into it, that's a reasonable price. This is kind of cool. This is cool.
The other thing about that they added, or not added, but they've returned is the Cavern Crawl, which is a metagame that I really enjoy every year for the International. So they give each person a randomized map of basically all of the heroes that are in Dota. And then on the map, there's 3 different corners, right? For, I forget, support, carry, and utility, I think. And the 3 different corners, each one has a costume for a character in that class. And so if you play your way to those corners, then you can get that set, which is kind of neat. So the way that you move between the rooms in that, or the dots on the grid there, is by winning games with those characters. Or if you play in Turbo, you get half credit. So you can play 2 Turbo games or 1 regular game, which allows me to play a Turbo, which I like to play Turbo because it's a faster game of Dota, and make progress in this metagame.
Yeah, that's cool. I remember you showing me that. And it's one of those elements. It's one of those like gameplay elements that force you to change the way that you would normally like kind of like sit in a rut and just kind of play the same way over and over again. So it's, I don't know. Part of me kind of likes it, and part of me is just like, I just want to play my way.
They're also doing weekly quests like Rocket League in Dota now.
Is that permanent or just for this thing?
Just for this thing. So you get battle pass points basically to give you battle pass levels in these little weekly challenges.
That's cool, I guess.
They're doing a thing though where you can at any time, well, I don't know if it's at any time or only once in a while, but you can set a different week, like a previous week, to be the active week for you.
Oh, that's nice. So if you miss one?
So if you miss one, exactly, because it is so tied to like the season only, right? There's only however many weeks there are. And so like if you miss a week, like, oh, well, I can't get those points now. But like now they're allowing you to choose to go back basically and say, oh yeah, well, I've finished this week's stuff, but I didn't finish last week's stuff. So let me activate last week's challenges and then I'll get credit for those. Whereas Rocket League, they just go with like seasonal challenges, and at any time you can get any of the unlocked seasonal challenges. So it's a different model, but it's still the same idea of like, oh yeah, here's targeted things you can do to give you battle pass levels.
Yeah, I'm going to throw a really weird reference in here, but Warframe does something similar.
Oh.
Where if you complete this week's challenges, it gets you, like, they have daily, weekly, and then, or daily, I don't know. They have 3 different levels of challenges. And if you complete any one of them, you will get a non-completed challenge from a previous week. So if you're totally caught up, you don't get anything extra. But if you fall behind, they'll just fill the spot in that you like completed with one from a previous week. So you can catch up at any time if you want to, which I really like. I like those. I mean, the Dota is doing something similar. I like those. Like if you're going on a vacation for a week, you shouldn't get penalized.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. You want to be able to, balance your life with the game.
Yeah. It should be based on essentially total number of hours played. Like if you play, 10 hours one week, but 0 the next week, and then 20 hours the week after, you should be in the same place as someone else.
Right. Yes.
Well, keep us updated. I want to know how far you get in this one. We're in like the first week, right?
Second or third week. I didn't even know it was happening until I like happened to click into Steam and like it had like the little news about this game, and it was like, oh yeah, Nemesis is here. I was like, because I had seen a couple of my friends playing Nemesis as like in the Steam friends list, and I figured it was just some custom game mode, because whenever you play a custom game mode, it also shows you the name of the custom game mode. So I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, oh, that's weird. They're getting back into Dota with like some oddly specific custom game, but it turns out it's a official custom game. So I was behind by a week or two and still am, but I look forward to playing a little more, and I probably won't catch up, but we'll see.